my family and I have embarked on a 100-day, 10,000-mile road trip, creatively on a budget, and we want to invite you along. Over the next few months, we hope that our adventures and the insights we gain along the way will help fuel you as you go from survival to thrival and live the life of your dreams. We had passed through Pagosa Springs in southwestern Colorado on our way to Durango, but after a couple days in Durango, we decided to backtrack and return to Pagosa Springs because we had discovered there were natural hot springs on the river in downtown, and we wanted to take our boys there. It occurred to me in hindsight that if you ever pass through a town with the word spring in its name, like Pagosa Springs, that it's a really good indicator that there are hot springs or cold springs there, and maybe you should do some research. We found a beautiful campground right on the edge of the Animas River, on the edge of Pagosa Springs. The river was swollen from the spring runoff and the melting snow. But the highlight of the RV park was that there was a huge pond, and we got the last spot right on the edge of the water. It was the first time on our trip that my family had had the chance to fish, so it was no surprise that the very first thing they did was drop in their lines and start fishing. My oldest son fished all afternoon, and he continued to amaze me by his patience and perseverance, even though he didn't catch a fish. My youngest son was desperate to fish too, and although we didn't have a rod that worked for him, we made a makeshift rod, and he had the time of his life. I loved our campsite, but it was so close to our neighbors it felt like we had no breathing room. But I was surprised by Joy, and we became friends with our neighbors, an incredible couple from Austin, Texas on summer holiday. Then things got even more interesting when we met another young couple from Hawaii who were traveling with their young daughter. And after the kids had played and it rained on us, we talked late into the evening, making s'mores around the fire. The next day, things got really interesting pretty fast when my oldest son caught his first fish of the trip. Awesome! Our neighbors were so generous in so many little ways, one of which was that they let my oldest son and I try their electric unicycle. Oh my gosh, it was so challenging, but so much fun. I hadn't tried a unicycle in 20 years, but I've always wanted to master it. And this just re-sparked that joy and desire. Never mind that it was an electric one. Later, I was invited on my first electric bike ride, and my neighbor and I rode into Pagosa Springs to scout it out. I was hooked. I love the bikes. And I was reminded again that almost nothing makes me feel like a kid inside, like riding a bike. In town, we found the free, natural hot springs on the edge of the river. They came out of the ground on the hillside between a pile of rocks, or piped under the sidewalk, and then flowed into some pools that had been rocked up on the edge of the river. The one higher pool looked like it might be warm, but the two lower ones were clearly mixing with the cold river water because the river was just so high this time of year. But it was just so much fun to see it and see all the people that were exploring the pools. Then we rode through the rest of the downtown area and explored some of the other private hot springs and just toured this small, beautiful town. We raced a storm back to the campground. The thunder and lightning closed in on us, but we beat the rain just in the nick of time. Sadly, the afternoon storm thwarted our trip to the hot springs with our boys, and I wasn't sure we were even going to get a chance to go with the early departure we had planned for the next day.
You got something? It's really hard to reel. It doesn't have a big fish. Okay, go ahead. 1, 2, 3.
Brother helping brother with the fishing.
That was the farthest one yet.
Yeah.
The next morning, I woke my boys up bright and early, and we hurried down to the hot springs so that we could take a dip before we got on the road. We were surprised and delighted to discover that we had the hot springs all to ourselves. And the town was quiet, with just a few people around getting coffee or hurrying off to work. The water temperature wasn't exactly perfect, but it was perfect for my boys. The back of the spring where it flowed in was burning hot, and then the front of the pools where the water met the river were very cold because the river was even higher in the morning from all the runoff and melt off from the afternoon before. So they found a little bit of middle ground with their back warm and their toes cold and played in the water. And I took a dip with them as well, although my selfie shots weren't the best. My husband and I have visited dozens and dozens of natural hot springs through the years, so we have a special affinity for them. And it was a joy to share some new ones with our boys. And then we just walked through town, had a quick breakfast, and had some coffee. And my heart just burst to be with my boys. It was just a perfect morning. Then we hurried back to the campground to pack up and get on the road, and we headed off that morning not knowing where we were going, but we would end up in Utah, and our youngest son would surprise us by learning something new.
Thank you for watching today. I hope this fueled your story. If it did, please share it with a friend, and you will be fueling my story as I continue to make these videos. I'll see you on the next one.